Alright, this is a video for the extra credit paper, the law of sines and cosines. One that looks like this. Make sure you read the directions. As you go through here, it says round all your answers to the nearest whole number. Then once you find your answer, or once you have your answer, you're going to come down here to the bottom and you're going to shade in that answer. So if 39 comes up to be one of your answers, you're going to like color it in completely so that you can't see it. And what's left over at the end is what's going to go down here in the boxes. And that'll answer the question that you have there. And that's what you send to me is just the answer to that question. So I'm going to do just a few of them. I'm going to do number one. Number one, I look at this and we have an angle and a side that are across from each other. So that tells me that I'm probably using the law of sines. I'm going to set up my proportion, and I put sine here every time, sine here every time, sine of 135, and it matches up to the 44, so that goes on bottom of it. Then we're looking for angle B, that's what we're trying to find. So I'm going to put angle B here, and then it matches up with the 14 over there, so that goes on bottom. I'm going to do these out in words. If you wanted to change that sign, you grab your calculator and say sine of 135 and put in the decimal there, and then cross multiply and do all that. That's fine. Go right ahead. When I do it, I'm going to cross multiply here, and I'm going to write down 14 times the sine of 135. Remember to put the 14 out front so it doesn't confuse you, and it doesn't confuse the calculator either. When I cross multiply this way, I get 44 times the sine of B. I'm trying to get the sine of B by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides here by 44. These cancel out and you're left with just sine of B equals, you grab your calculator and you can punch all this into your calculator. 14 times, I just do the top first, then we'll deal with the bottom. So 14 times the sine of 135. Notice 135 is not an angle that normally we deal with because the right triangles, but since we're dealing with any triangle, the angles, one of the angles can be 135 degrees. That comes out to be that big long number. Then I'm just going to hit divided by 44, so I don't have to write down a whole bunch of stuff. So then I have that, and I'm going to round it off. Looks like that 8 tells me to round that 9 up, which would mean that 4 has to go up, so about 0.2250. And if you round it off a little different, it's probably going to give you the same answer since we're rounding to the nearest whole number. So now we know the sine of angle B is that, and all you're going to do is on your calculator, I'm going to hit clear, you're going to hit second, sine, pulls up that sine -1, tells the calculator, hey, we're looking for the angle. So we know the sine, we're looking for the angle, which now we punch in 0.2250, and the calculator is going to tell us an angle, 13.00. So the measure of angle B, we round it off to the nearest degree, is about 13 degrees. So that's answer number one. Then what you do with that is you go down here to the bottom of the paper and you just scribble out wherever that answer is. That's not going to be part of your final answer down here. What's left over is going to be part of it. Next, I'm going to do number 4. Number 4 looks like this. Right away I see that I have 3 sides, so that tells me that I'm probably using the law of cosines. This time they wanted us to find the measure of angle A, so I'm going to mark that. That's the angle we're trying to find. Remember, when you're setting up the law of cosines, you look at whatever it is that you're trying to find, and it either has to be on the far left or on the far right. Since we're looking for an angle, it's going to be on the far right. So I'm going to set it up over here, and it's going to say cosine of angle A. That's what we're looking for. If that's the case, then that means little a has to be here. And then we look at our other letters. Little b there, little c, minus 2 times little b again, times little c again. So that's what our formula is going to look like this time. We know all of this stuff except for this. That's going to be our variable. This is one of the harder ones when you're using law of cosines. You just got a little more work to do. It's not really hard. So we plug in, and you can go up here and label it if you want. This is big A, so little a is over there. Big B, little b is over here. Big C, little c is over there. And we're just going to put in each number where they belong. So that's 28 squared equals little b is 27. Little c is 25. Minus 2 times little b was 27. Little c was 25. Remember that these two numbers and these two numbers are always going to be the same. And then over here, cosine, we don't know what big A is. That's what we're looking for. So now we have everything in here except for that last part right there. If we were looking for a side, then our variable would be over here. Now I do these parts. Do this first, write it down. Do this second, write it down. And then do this part third and write it down. So I'm just going to grab my calculator. 28 squared, 784. Then I'm going to punch all this right into my calculator. 27 squared plus 25 squared, and I get 1354. Minus 2 times 27 times 25. So I grab my calculator. 2 times 27 times 25, and I get 1350. And that's still times the cosine of big A. Then I got to just solve it. So this is like saying 784 equals 1354 minus 1350 times x. And you'd solve that just like you solved equations all through algebra and all this year in geometry. So first thing I'm going to do is whatever this number is, I subtract it on both sides. Grab your calculator. You got 784 minus 1354, and I get negative 570. Don't forget that negative. It'll mess you up if you do. These cancel out, and you still got minus or negative 1350 times the cosine of A. Now I'm going to divide both sides by whatever this number is. Don't forget the negative there. So you divide both sides by negative 1350. Negative 1350. These cancel out. You're left with cosine of A equals, I do the division over here, negative 570 divided by negative 1350. And I come up with 0.422222. We're looking for an angle. So next thing we got to do when we're trying to find that angle is on our calculator, hit the second button. This time we want cosine. Tells the calculator that we're looking for the angle, so we got second cosine, and then we just punch this in, 0.4222. Close the parenthesis, and it says 65.026. So that means the measure of angle A is, and we're going to round it off to the nearest whole number, so about 65 degrees. So angle A right here is about 65 degrees. Next one I'm going to do is number 7. We're trying to find angle C. This time we know this angle. We don't know the side across from it. We know these two sides. So it looks like we're probably looking for an angle again. And we're going to use the law of cosines. Looks like it's the same setup as number 4. I just picked it random, so wasn't really paying attention. So we're going to use the law of cosines. I might do an extra one. when we do this, again, label everything. This is little a, this is little c, little b would be over here. This one's it's a little tougher than some of the others because we can't find angle C directly, because if we try to set up the law of cosines using angle C, it's going to look like this: 19.7 squared equals little a squared, which is 25.1, plus little b squared. Well, we don't know little b. Then we'd have minus 2 times 25.1 times little b again times the cosine of big C. So that'd be our equation, but the bad thing is that we have more than one variable in here, so we can't actually solve it. So what we have to do first on this one is we have to go through and we have to find little b. Then once we find little b using the law of cosines, then we can either plug into this formula or we can use the law of sines to find big C. So I'm going to set it up and we're going to find little b first, even though that's not what we're actually looking for. So that's not actually going to be our answer. When we set up the law of cosines using that, little b is going to be over on the far left all by itself. Then you got little a, 25.1 squared, plus little c, 19.7 squared, minus 2 times little a again is 25.1 times little c, which is 19.7, times the cosine. We don't want the cosine of c. I know that's what we're looking for, but this time, since we're trying to find little b first, we actually want the cosine of that 25.5 degrees. So that's going to be our formula. Again, this isn't going to tell us our answer. This is going to tell us what little b is. Then we can use that to help us find big C. And this isn't too difficult because since we're finding a side using law of cosines, you're just going to stick all of that right there into your calculator, just like it is. So I grab my calculator. I can get it on the screen. And I'm going to punch in exactly what it says here. Yeah, I can't get everything on the screen at once. So I punch in 25.1 squared plus 19.7 squared minus 2 parenthesis 25.1, close the parenthesis, open up a new one, 19.7, close the parenthesis, open up a new one. And you could put in time signs instead of all the parentheses, that's up to you. Times cosine 25.5, and remember here on mine, because I have the calculator opened up its own parenthesis here, so I have to close both parentheses, otherwise it'll say error. Hit equals, and it comes out to be 125.497. So b squared equals 125.497. We'll go out that far. Then your last step is you have to take the square root of both sides. These are going to cancel out, leave you with just b. So on our calculator, we just hit second square root 125.497, and that comes out to 11.2. They said round your answers off to the nearest whole number, so b is about 11. We better go out one place. I forgot that's not our answer. So we'll say little b is 11.2. So I wrote that in up there. Now there's several things that we could do here. Little b that's not what we were looking for. We were looking for angle C. Probably the easiest thing to do is Now that we have this, and we know this angle up here, and they're across from each other, we could use the law of sines. Or we could take little b and just stick it into here and here, and do this formula out like we did on one of the previous problems. I'm going to do the law of sines. So I do sine here, sine here. Our angle that we know is 25.5. That's across from the 11.2 that we just found. We're looking for angle C, and that's across from the 19.7. And then I just cross multiply, and when I get this one, this will be our answer. So I cross multiply here. I got 11.2 times the sine of C equals, cross multiply this way, 19.7 times the sine of 25.5. Trying to get sine of C by itself, so 11 point, I'm going to divide both sides by 11.2. These cancel out, you're left with sine of C equals, and then I'm just going to punch all this into my calculator. 19.7 times sine 25.5. That's just the top part. Then I hit divided by 11.2. And I come up with 0.7572. Again, that's the sine of C. To find the measure of angle C, then we got to hit second and punch that into our calculator. So the measure of angle C, we grab our calculator, we hit second. This time we're going to hit sine. Tells the calculator we're finding an angle. We punch in 0.7572, and it comes up to be about 49 degrees. So the measure of angle C is about 49 degrees. You check, see if that's one of the answers down there in the box and mark it out. Hopefully it is. Alright, next one I'm going to do is number 10. It says find the measure of angle B, so we're looking for this angle. This is little b over here, this is little c, this would be little a on that side. Just labeling it all. Here I notice that I have this angle and this side, they're across from each other, so I'm probably going to use law of sines. If I set up law of sines, set up sine here, sine 41, the 41 matches up to the 28. And I'm looking for angle B. I'm going to put B there, and it matches up to the 18. So it's going to work out law of sines. I just have to find the angle B. I cross multiply. This way I get 18 times the sine of 41. Going the other way, I get 28 times the sine of B. Trying to get sine of B by itself, so I divide both sides by 28. Divide both sides by 28. Those cancel out. You're left with sine of B equals, over here on this side, I'm just going to punch that into my calculator. Do the top first, so and let's clear all this off. 18 times the sine of 41. That gives me that number. Then I'm just going to hit divided by 28. And it's 0.4218. I'm not looking for the sine of B, I'm looking for the measure of angle B. So next thing I have to do is on my calculator I hit second, sine, and I put in this number, 0.4218, and I end up with we're going to round that up to about 25 degrees. So that's the measure of angle B. So again, you look at the bottom, see if it's down there somewhere. If it is, you mark it out. Last one I'm going to do here is number 12. Let's do an extra one. I was only going to do 4 of them, but do this one. I look at this, and I don't have any of the setups that I talked about for law of sines or law of cosines. But what I do have is I know these two angles, and I can add them together and get 72. Then I can subtract that from 180 and get 108. And now I know angle B is 108 degrees. Now I have an angle and a side that match up. So now I can use the law of cosines. We're trying to find BC over here. Trying to find that side, which would be labeled little a. This over here is little b. The side over here would be little c. So when I go to set up my proportion, sine, sine, here's where you got to be sort of careful. We want to make sure that we have the ones that match up. So 108 and the 40. Then we know the other two angles, but we got to decide which one we actually want to use. Well, we're trying to find little a, so we want the one that it matches up to, which is 54. So we really don't care about this 18, and we really don't care about little c there. And then little a goes on bottom there. We cross multiply. I get a times sine of 108 equals, cross multiply this way, you get 40 times the sine of 54. We want to get a by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by the sine of 108. These cancel out. You're left with just a on that side. And then on the other side, we grab our calculator and we do the math. Do what's on top first. 40 times sine of 54 gives us that number. Then just hit divided by sine 108, and it tells you that. And this time that's your answer, so it's about 34. So little a, length of that segment is about 34 units, whatever the units happen to be. Check again. Make sure you check on down here. If you find it on here, then you just mark it out because it's not part of your answer. Hopefully that helps a little bit.